1 year after my husband died from what doctors called a sudden stroke, I finally hired a plumber to fix a leak behind his old office wall. I was sitting in a cafe when my phone vibrated. His voice was tense and urgent. "Ma'am, you need to come home right now." He said, "I just uncovered something hidden inside your husband's office. And don't tell anyone about this." When I returned home, I was shocked by what my husband had left behind. A secret so dark it would destroy my family forever. Thank you so much for being here and staying with me so far. Before we continue, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I truly love seeing how far these stories travel. And just to be clear, this story includes some fictionalized details used to help explain the situation and its meaning. Any similarity to real individuals or settings is unintentional, but the message I'm sharing is something I believe can genuinely help you. The phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon, 6 months to the day after I buried my husband. I was sitting in the living room, asterisk. Our Times living room, though it felt less like ours with each passing week, staring at the closed door of Martin's office. That door had stayed shut since that awful morning in April. I couldn't bring myself to open it, couldn't face the absence that would fill every corner of that room, the ghost of his laugh, the faint scent of his sandalwood cologne still clinging to the curtains. The vibration against my palm pulled me back. Wesley Kane, the caller ID read, the plumber I'd finally hired after months of ignoring the slow drip behind that closed door, Mrs. Ashford. His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before, not the usual contractor's tone of explaining costs or scheduling delays. This was something else. Urgency, maybe fear. "You need to come home right now." My stomach tightened. "Wesley, I'm just out for coffee. Ma'am, I found something you need to see." He paused, and I heard him exhale slowly, like a man deciding whether to step off a cliff. "But don't come alone, Mrs. Ashford. Bring your son, both your sons, if you have them." The line went dead. I left my half-finished latte on the table and drove home with my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The autumn air in Lake Oswego felt crisp against my face as I pulled into the driveway, but I barely noticed. Wesley's truck sat there like a warning. He met me at the door before I could use my key. Sawdust clung to his flannel shirt. His face, usually so calm, so professional, looked pale beneath his tan. "Mrs. Ashford," he stepped aside. "I'm sorry. I didn't know if this was the right thing." "Wesley, what's going on?" He led me through the familiar hallway, past the photos of Martin and me on our 25th anniversary, past Dennis's college graduation portrait to that closed door. My heart hammered against my ribs. 6 months. 6 months of walking past this door, of pretending that if I didn't open it, some part of Martin was still here, still working at his desk, still alive. Wesley pushed the door open. The office looked violated, stripped. The carpet had been pulled back near the wall behind where Martin's desk used to sit. Tools scattered across the floor and the wall. Jesus, the wall was gone. Not just opened, completely removed, exposing wooden studs and darkness beyond. "The pipe leak was behind here," Wesley explained, his voice tight. "I had to open the wall to get to it." "But Mrs. Ashford," he pointed his flashlight into the gap, "there's something you need to see." I stepped closer. The flashlight beam cut through the shadows, illuminating what shouldn't have been there. A space, hidden, deliberate, maybe 5 by 6 feet, carved out between the walls of Martin's office and the bathroom beyond. The drywall on the hidden side had never been painted, never been finished. This wasn't some old architectural quirk from when the house was built in the 80s. Someone had built this recently, secretly. And in the back corner of that hidden space, embedded in the wall like a secret heart, sat a small safe. "I didn't open it," Wesley said quickly. "Didn't touch anything after I saw it, but Mrs. Ashford, your husband," he trailed off, clearly unsure how to finish that sentence. My husband had hidden this. Martin, who'd shared everything with me for 42 years, had built a secret room in our house and never said a word. The safe had a digital lock, 4 digits. My hands shook as I punched in our anniversary. 0615, June 15th, 1982. The day we'd promised to share everything, to have no secrets. The lock clicked open. Inside, three things waited in the darkness. A USB drive, a leather-bound journal I recognized as Martin's, the one he'd always kept in his desk drawer, and a stack of manila folders, each tab marked with a name in his precise, careful handwriting. I pulled out the folders one by one, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. Dennis, my son. Caleb, my son-in-law. Dr. Malcolm Crane, our family doctor. Eleanor Sutherland, my business partner of 30 years, my best friend, Mrs. Ashford. Wesley's voice seemed to come from very far away. I think someone's been in here before. Before me, I mean. Look at the dust. He was right. In the beam of his flashlight, I could see it now. Disturbed patterns in the thin layer of dust coating the hidden room's floor. Faint impressions, footprints carefully obscured, but there. Someone had known about this room. Someone had been searching. Wesley shifted his weight, uncomfortable. That's why I said about calling the police and your son. This feels wrong, Mrs. Ashford. Like something bad. Wrong. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with numb fingers. Dennis calling. I stared at his name on the screen. My boy, my only child. And didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Not until I understood what the hell my dead husband had been hiding from me. Wesley cleared his throat. I should go. Give you some privacy. But Mrs. Ashford, he met my eyes, and I saw genuine concern there. Be careful. Whatever this is, your husband went to a lot of trouble to keep it hidden. I nodded, unable to form words. Wesley let himself out, leaving me alone in the gutted office with my dead husband's secrets. I picked up the journal. The leather was soft, worn from Martin's hands, holding it, writing in it, trusting it with whatever he couldn't trust me with. The thought cut deeper than any knife. The first page was dated March 2023, over a year before he died. I took a breath that felt like swallowing glass and began to read. Asterisk, Josephine asterisk, his handwriting said. Steady, clear, so achingly familiar. Asterisk. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. And it wasn't an accident. Asterisk. The journal fell from my hands. Outside, the afternoon sun continued to shine, oblivious. Somewhere in the neighborhood, someone was mowing their lawn. Normal sounds, a normal day. But standing in that violated room, staring at my husband's words glowing up from the floor like an accusation, I understood nothing would ever be normal again. I locked the office door behind me. Rain began to fall outside, tapping against the window in the same rhythm Martin's fingers used to drum when he was thinking. I sat down at his desk and opened the journal to the second page. My hands trembled as I turned each sheet. Martin's familiar handwriting. Words he had written in secret, knowing I might never see them. Words he had hidden because he knew something terrible was coming. The first dated entry was from March 2023, more than a year before he died, asterisk the 15th of March 2023. I found discrepancies in the company accounts. Dennis has been moving money, large amounts. I need to investigate quietly. Asterisk. My breath caught. Dennis, our son. Martin had suspected him over a year ago. I flipped forward, my pulse hammering. Asterisk the 3rd of August 2023. I've been looking into Dennis's husband, Caleb. He isn't who he claims to be. Previous marriages, previous deaths. I'm frightened, but I need more proof. Asterisk. The rain grew heavier, drumming harder against the glass. I could barely hear it over the roar in my ears. Asterisk. The 9th of January 2024. I've been feeling ill. Nausea, hair loss, confusion. My vitamins taste different. Dr. Crane prescribed them. Eleanor introduced Dr. Crane to our family 10 years ago. Could there be a connection? Asterisk Dr. Crane. Eleanor Sutherland. Names I had trusted. Names Martin had questioned. I turned the page, and the handwriting changed. Shakier now, less controlled. Asterisk. The 18th of February 2024. I confronted Caleb yesterday. He smiled at me and said, "You should be more careful, Martin. I need to tell Josephine, but I need proof first." Asterisk. My husband had faced down a killer alone. The final entries were from late March 2024, just weeks before Martin died. The handwriting was barely legible, scrawled in jagged lines across the page. Asterisk, the 28th of March 2024. Worse today. Can't think clearly, saw lawyer. Safety deposit box. Forgive me, Josephine. Asterisk. That was the last entry in ink. But clipped to the final page was a small note in Martin's hand, written in pencil, the letters large and unsteady. USB drive. Listen. April 10. Asterisk April 10th, 2024. 2 days before he died. I pulled the USB drive from the safe and plugged it into Martin's old laptop, still sitting on the corner of his desk. The screen flickered to life, and a single audio file appeared. I clicked play. Static. Then Martin's voice, soft and hoarse, filled the room. Josephine, if you're hearing this, I've run out of time. I pressed my hand over my mouth, tears blurring my vision. Look at my medical records. Dr. Crane is lying. It wasn't a stroke. The symptoms, they're consistent with poisoning. Thallium, maybe. I don't know. But I know it wasn't natural. His voice wavered, and I heard him take a shaky breath. And Eleanor. Eleanor never forgave me for choosing you. I thought she had moved on, but I was wrong. She introduced Crane to us. She loaned Dennis money when Dennis was desperate. She's been there, Josephine, in the background, waiting, watching. A long pause. Rain battered the window. I've left evidence with my lawyer, Lillian Prescott. She has instructions. If anything happens to me, she'll open a sealed file in April 2025. But I don't know if I'll make it that long. His voice broke. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted to be sure. I wanted to protect you. But now I'm afraid I've waited too long. Another pause. I could hear him crying softly. Please, Josephine, protect yourself. Don't trust Dennis. Don't trust Caleb. And don't trust Eleanor. I love you. I will always love you. The recording ended. I sat in the dark, the rain pounding, Martin's voice still echoing in my head. He had known he was being poisoned. He had known who was doing it, and he had tried to save me. I looked down at the journal, at the folders spread across the desk. Dennis, Caleb, Dr. Crane, Eleanor, all of them connected, all of them circling like vultures. And Martin had stood between them and me. I pressed my hands to my face, grief crashing over me in waves. I had thought I was mourning a husband who had died of natural causes. But now I knew the truth. Martin had been murdered, and the people who killed him were still out there, still close, still dangerous. I wiped my eyes and reached for my phone. I needed to call someone. The police, a lawyer, someone who could help me make sense of this nightmare. But before I could dial, headlights swept across the window. I froze. A car was pulling into my driveway. I glanced at the clock on Martin's desk. 8:47 p.m. Dennis and Caleb's weekly check-in visit. They were early. I looked at the journal, the USB drive, the folders scattered across the desk. If they saw any of this, if they knew I had found Martin's evidence. I heard the car doors slam outside, footsteps on the front porch. I had 30 seconds, maybe less. My hands shook as I shoved the journal and the USB drive back into the safe. I slammed it shut, spun the lock, and pushed the panel back into place over the hidden compartment. The folders. I swept them into Martin's desk drawer and shut it. The doorbell rang. I stood, my heart pounding, and forced myself to take a breath. I couldn't let them see my fear. I couldn't let them know I knew. I walked to the front door, flipped on the porch light, and opened it. Dennis stood there smiling, rain dripping from his jacket. Caleb stood beside him, his eyes sharp and watchful. Hey, Mom, Dennis said. Hope we're not too early. I smiled back, every muscle in my body screaming to run. Not at all, I said. Come in. Caleb's eyes softened in a way that might have fooled me yesterday. We all miss him, he said gently. I nodded, swallowing the rage that threatened to choke me. This man, this killer, standing in my home, pretending to mourn my husband. Can I get you anything? I asked. Coffee? Tea? That'd be great, Dennis said, following me into the kitchen. I moved through the motions, grinding beans, filling the pot, setting out mugs, while every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I knew what they wanted. "So," Dennis said, leaning against the counter. "The plumber. Everything okay with Dad's office?" I kept my face neutral. "Just old pipes. You know how it is with these old houses." "He had to open up the wall, right?" Dennis pressed. "Did he find anything? Old papers, maybe?" "Dad kept a lot of stuff in there." I met his eyes. My son. The boy I had taught to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to be a good man. The boy who had helped murder his own father. "Nothing important," I said. "Just dust and spiders." Dennis relaxed, just slightly, but I saw it. I poured the coffee and carried the mugs back to the living room. Caleb had made himself comfortable on the couch, his legs crossed, his expression pleasant and watchful. "Josephine," he said as I handed him a mug, "have you thought any more about updating your will?" "I know it's difficult to think about, but Dennis is worried. After Martin?" "Well, these things should be in order." I forced a smile. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon." "Of course not," Caleb said smoothly. "But you never know. Accidents happen." The way he said it, so casual, so matter-of-fact, sent ice down my spine. Dennis jumped in. "My friend Conrad Mercer. Remember him, Mom? He's a lawyer now, really good with estate planning. He could help you get everything sorted out. Conrad Mercer." The name from Martin's journal. "I'll think about it," I said. We talked for another 20 minutes. Small talk, surface-level pleasantries that felt like walking through a minefield. Every word, every gesture, I analyzed through this new lens of suspicion. Dennis kept steering the conversation back to finances, to the company, to my plans for the future. Caleb watched me, not obviously, but I felt his eyes tracking every movement, every flicker of emotion. When I excused myself to use the bathroom, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. I stopped in the hallway, just out of sight, and listened. "Do you think she found it?" Caleb's voice, low and sharp. "If she did, we need to move faster." Dennis sounded stressed. "Your window's closing. Then maybe it's time to..." I flushed the toilet loudly and walked back into the kitchen. They both looked up, smiling. "Everything okay, Mom?" Dennis asked. "Fine," I said. "Just getting old." Caleb laughed, a light, pleasant sound that made my stomach turn. They stayed another half hour. Dennis reminded me again about Conrad Mercer. Caleb touched my arm as he said goodbye, his fingers cool and deliberate. "Take care of yourself, Josephine," he said. "We worry about you." I stood at the door and watched their car pull away, the taillights disappearing down the street. My son, my own son, had done this. I closed the door and locked it. Then I locked the deadbolt. Then I slid the chain into place. For a long time, I just stood there, my forehead pressed against the wood, trying to process what I had just heard. Asterisk, your window is closing. Maybe it's time to... Asterisk, time to what? Finish me off the way they had finished Martin? I pushed away from the door and walked back into the living room. My hands were shaking again. I poured myself a whiskey and drank it in one swallow. Martin had known. He had known, and he had tried to warn me, and I hadn't listened. I had been too blind, too trusting to see what was right in front of me. But now I saw, and I had to do something. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the police, but then I stopped. What would I tell them? That my son and son-in-law had whispered something suspicious in my kitchen? That I had found my dead husband's journal? They would think I was a grief-stricken old woman losing her mind. I needed more. I needed proof. I set the phone down and started moving through the house, checking windows, doors, locks. Martin used to joke that I watched too many crime shows, but he had been careful, too, cautious. He had taught me to be observant. That's when I saw it. In the living room, next to the couch where Caleb had been sitting, there was a small decorative lamp, a gift from Dennis and Caleb last Christmas. I picked it up and turned it over, and there it was. A tiny camera, no bigger than a button, nestled inside the base, the lens still warm to the touch. They had been watching me. How long? Days? Weeks? I set the lamp down carefully, my heart pounding. They knew, or they suspected. That's why they had come tonight, to see if I had found anything, to gauge my reaction. And now they were watching, waiting, planning. I looked around the room, at the shadows, at the corners, at every object Dennis and Caleb had touched over the past 6 months. How many more cameras were there? How long had they been spying on me in my own home? I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. Somewhere out there, my son and his husband were watching a live feed, waiting to see what I would do next. I turned off the lamp, let them watch the dark. I didn't sleep that night. At 7 inches the morning, with the hidden camera wrapped in cloth on my passenger seat, I made the call I should have made months ago. By 8, I was climbing 3 flights of stairs in an old brick building in downtown Portland. No elevator, just narrow steps that creaked under my weight and smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. The name Declan Foster, Private Investigations, was painted on the frosted glass door in faded gold letters. I knocked and stepped inside. The office was small, just a desk, 2 chairs, a filing cabinet, and a window overlooking the street. But it was neat, organized, the kind of place where things got done. Declan Foster looked up from his computer, mid-40s, lean and wiry, with the sharp eyes of someone who didn't miss much. Former Portland PD, according to the framed commendation on the wall behind him. Mrs. Ashford, he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was firm. Thank you for seeing me on short notice, I said. Sit. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. You sounded urgent. I sat down and placed everything on his desk. The USB drive, Martin's journal, the camera I'd found in the lamp. 6 months of grief and growing fear, all laid out in front of a stranger. My husband died 6 months ago, I began, my voice shaking. The doctor said it was a stroke, but I found evidence. He left me a journal, a recording. He didn't think it was natural. Declan leaned forward, his expression carefully neutral. Go on. I told him everything. The hidden room, the safe, the journal entries tracking Dennis's financial crimes and Caleb's dark past, the recording where Martin named Dr. Crane and Eleanor Sutherland, the visit from Dennis and Caleb last night, the whispered conversation I'd overheard, and the camera. By the time I finished, my hands were trembling. Declan had filled 3 pages of notes in a worn leather notebook. He set his pen down and looked at me. Mrs. Ashford, he said quietly, I'm going to be straight with you. This isn't paranoia. You're in danger. The words hit me like a physical blow. Hearing someone else say it made it real. Your son, Declan continued, has offshore accounts. I can see that much just from a basic search. Significant transfers started about 3 years ago. Hundreds of thousands at first, then millions. He turned his computer screen toward me. Bank records, wire transfers, dates, and amounts that painted a damning picture. And your son-in-law, Declan said, clicking to another screen. Caleb Ashford, maiden name supposedly Whitman, but that's not his real name. He pulled up a series of articles from different newspapers. Arizona, Nevada, Washington State. * Charles Valerie Whitman, 2008. Married to a man named Spencer Reed. He died in a house fire. Charles collected a $200,000 life insurance payout. * He clicked to the next article. * C. Vivian Blackwood, 2010. Married to Nolan Bennett. He died in a boating accident. Another insurance payout. This time, $500,000. * My stomach turned. He's been doing this for years. Different names, different men, Declan said. Always a tragic accident, always a payout. And Dennis? I asked, my voice thin. Does he know? Declan met my eyes. Your son is either being manipulated or he's complicit. Either way, your husband discovered something that got him killed. And now they know you're looking. The room felt too small, too close. I couldn't breathe. And the poisoning? I managed. The thallium Martin mentioned. Is that possible? It's a classic method, Declan said grimly. Slow-acting, mimics natural illness. Hair loss, confusion, nausea. If the doctor isn't looking for it, it's almost impossible to detect. especially if the doctor is in on it. Dr. Crane, Eleanor, Dennis, Caleb, a conspiracy that had wrapped around Martin like a noose. Declan stood and walked to the window. There's more. He pulled up another file on his computer, traffic camera footage from the street near my house. A dark sedan parked at different times over the past 2 weeks. Always within view of my driveway, always watching. Someone's been surveilling you, Declan said professionally. This isn't just your son checking in. This is organized. I stared at the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. What do I do? I whispered. Declan turned to face me. First, we secure your safety. No more living alone in that house without protection. Second, we gather evidence. Your husband's journal is good, but it's not enough for a criminal case. We need more financial records, witness statements, forensic proof, and third, he leaned against his desk, arms crossed. Your husband mentioned a lawyer in his journal. If he left evidence with someone, we need to find that person. Fast. Because whoever's behind this, they're looking for that evidence, too. It took me a full day to find her. Martin's college roommate, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years, Lillian Prescott, attorney at law, with an office overlooking the Willamette River. When I stepped into her office that Thursday afternoon and saw the framed photograph on her desk, Martin and Lillian laughing at a class reunion 10 years ago, I realized how much of my husband's inner world I had never known. Lillian stood to greet me. She was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed and composed, dressed in a charcoal pantsuit that spoke of quiet authority. But when she took my hand, her grip was warm. Josephine, she said gently, I've been waiting for this call. I just hoped it wouldn't come this soon. I sank into the chair across from her desk, exhausted. You knew? I knew Martin was afraid, Lillian said, sitting down. I didn't know how bad it was until it was too late. She gestured to the photograph. Martin and I reconnected about 5 years ago. We became close again. He trusted me. He never mentioned you, I said quietly. He wanted to protect you, Lillian replied. The less you knew, the safer you were. Or so he thought. I pulled out Martin's journal and set it on the desk. He left me this, and a recording. He said you were his lawyer. Lillian nodded slowly. He came to see me last year. He was terrified, Josephine. He'd discovered something about Dennis, about his husband, Caleb. I said the name, bitter on my tongue. Yes. Lillian opened a file on her desk. Martin brought me documents, financial records, background checks he'd done himself. He was convinced Caleb was dangerous, and he believed Dennis was either being manipulated or was complicit. My throat tightened. When did he come to you? The first time, last March. But the last time, Lillian paused, her expression pained. A week before he died, he made an emergency appointment. He wanted to change his will immediately. Remove Dennis entirely. The words hit me like a punch. He was going to disinherit him. Yes. He said he couldn't let him benefit from whatever was about to happen. I stared at her. He knew he was dying. Lillian's eyes filled with sorrow. He showed me the symptoms, Josephine. Hair loss, confusion, nausea. He was certain he was being poisoned. Why didn't he go to the police? My voice cracked. Why didn't he tell me? He tried to tell you, Lillian said softly. But you didn't see it. None of us did. And he was afraid that if he acted too soon, they'd cover their tracks. He needed proof. Ironclad proof. Did he get it? Lillian reached into her filing cabinet and pulled out a thick envelope sealed with red wax. He left me this. A sealed will. Instructions were very specific. It's not to be opened until 1 year after his death. April 2025. 6 more months. I leaned forward. Why would he wait? He said if he acted too quickly, they'd know he was onto them. He needed time to gather everything, bank records, medical evidence, testimony. He wanted to make sure that when the truth came out, it would be undeniable. I looked at the envelope. Inside it, Martin's final weapon. Evidence that could bring down Dennis, Caleb, Dr. Crane, Eleanor, all of them. But 6 months felt like an eternity. There's more, Lillian said, her voice turning grim. She slid a stack of legal documents across the desk. I scanned the top page. My name. A petition filed with the county court. Petition for determination of incapacity and appointment of guardian. What is this? I whispered. 3 days ago, Lillian said, Conrad Mercer filed a motion with the court. He's trying to have you declared legally incompetent. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. Medical assessments. Statements from doctor. Malcolm Crane claiming I was suffering from dementia. Testimony from dentist describing my erratic behavior since Martin's death. And at the bottom, a signature. My signature. But I had never signed this document. They forged it, Lillian said, her jaw tight. They're claiming you requested Conrad Mercer as your legal guardian. If the court approves this, Dennis will control everything. Your assets, your medical decisions, your life. I couldn't breathe. They're trying to erase me. Legally, yes, Lillian said. And once they have control, Josephine, you become a liability, just like Martin. The room spun. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about revenge. It was systematic, calculated. They were going to take everything from me. And then we fight back, Lillian said firmly. She opened her laptop and began typing. I'm filing a counter motion today. I'll get an independent psychiatric evaluation to prove you're of sound mind. I'll challenge the forgery, and I'll request a restraining order to keep Dennis and Caleb away from you until this is resolved. Will it work? I asked. It'll buy us time, Lillian said. But Josephine, you need to understand, this is going to get ugly. Conrad Mercer is good at what he does. And whoever's behind this has resources. Eleanor Sutherland, if Martin was right about her, has connections. Money, influence. I don't care, I said, my voice hard. They killed my husband. They're trying to kill me. I'm not going to let them win. Lillian's expression softened. Martin said you'd say that. She reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. He loved you, Josephine. Everything he did, the journal, the will, the evidence, he did it to protect you. Now it's our job to finish what he started. I nodded, tears blurring my vision. What do we do next? Lillian pulled up a calendar. The competency hearing is scheduled for next week. I'll represent you. But in the meantime, you need to stay safe. Do you have somewhere secure to go? I'm working with a private investigator, I said. Declan Foster. Lillian's eyes lit with recognition. Former Portland PD. Good man. Stay close to him. And don't go anywhere alone. If they're moving this fast, it means they're desperate. She handed me a business card with her direct number. Call me if anything happens, day or night. I stood to leave, but Lillian's voice stopped me. Josephine. I turned back. They're not just after your money, she said quietly. They're trying to erase you legally before they finish what they started with Martin. And if that sealed will gets opened early, if they find out what Martin left behind, they'll destroy it. We have to protect you, starting now. I walked out of her office and into the gray Portland afternoon, the weight of Lillian's words pressing down on me. They were trying to take everything, my husband, my son, my freedom, my life, but Martin had left me a weapon, and I wasn't going to let him down. The attack came at 6:47 Monday morning, through my bank account instead of a weapon. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. An alert from the bank. Transaction. $50,000 transferred to offshore account, authorized by Josephine Ashford. Except I hadn't authorized anything. My hand froze on the coffee pot. I set it down and opened the banking app with shaking fingers. The transaction was there. $50,000 moved to an account in the Cayman Islands. The timestamp read 6:32 a.m., 15 minutes ago. I called the bank immediately. Mrs. Ashford, the representative said after I explained, our records show the transaction was authorized with your signature and security password. I didn't authorize it, I said, my voice tight. I want to see the authorization form. There was a pause. I'll send it to your email. The document arrived 60 seconds later. I opened it, my heart pounding. There it was, my signature at the bottom of a wire transfer request. But it wasn't my signature. It was close, damn close. But the A in Ashford was slightly off. The curve too sharp, the loop too narrow. I'd been signing my name for 65 years. I knew the difference. "This is forged," I told the representative. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Ashford, but without proof of fraud, we can't reverse the transaction. You'll need to file a formal dispute and provide documentation." "How long will that take?" 4 to 6 weeks. I hung up, fury boiling in my chest. They were moving fast. My phone rang again. Dennis. I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched. Then I answered. "Hey, Mom," Dennis said, his voice dripping with false concern. "I just heard from the bank. They called me as your emergency contact. Are you okay? You've been a little confused about your finances lately." There it was. The gaslighting. "I'm fine," I said evenly. "Just a mistake." "Are you sure?" Dennis pressed. "Because Dad used to handle all the money stuff, and I know you've been struggling since we lost him. Maybe you just forgot you authorized the transfer." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "Maybe you're right, son. Everything's been hard. I know, Mom. I know." His voice softened, syrupy with fake sympathy. "Listen, maybe it's time we sat down with Conrad Mercer. Get your estate stuff organized. Take some of the pressure off you." "I'll think about it," I said. "Great. I'll call you later to check in." He hung up. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the phone, and felt the rage settle into something colder, sharper. They thought I was weak, confused, easy to manipulate. They had no idea. I called Declan. "They hit my bank account," I said. 50 grand, forged signature." "Expected," Declan said grimly. "They're building a paper trail, making you look financially incompetent? It's ammunition for the competency hearing. Can you prove the signature's fake? I know it is, but proving it in court will take time," Declan finished. "Time they're not going to give you. Stay sharp, Josephine. This is just the beginning." At noon, a package arrived. I stared at the label. No return address. Just my name and a postal stamp from downtown Portland. Inside was a prescription bottle. The label read, "Josephine Ashford, mild sedative. Take 1 tablet nightly as needed for sleep. Prescribed by Dr. Malcolm Crane." I hadn't seen Dr. Crane since Martin died. There was a note inside, handwritten on a prescription pad. Asterisk, Josephine Dennis. Mentioned you've been under stress. These will help you sleep. Take 1 each night. Dr. Crane. Asterisk, I held the bottle up to the light. Small white tablets, unmarked. Something about it felt wrong. I set the bottle on the counter and didn't touch it. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Conrad Mercer, Mrs. Ashford, he said smoothly. "I wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss updating your estate documents. Dennis suggested it might give you some peace of mind." "I'm not interested," I said. "I understand this is a difficult time," Mercer continued as if I hadn't spoken, "but it's important to have your affairs in order, especially given your recent confusion." "I'm not confused," I said sharply. "Of course not," Mercer said, his tone patronizing. "But the bank incident this morning was fraud." A pause. "That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Ashford. Are you sure you're feeling all right?" I hung up. The noose was tightening. Financial fraud, medical intervention, legal pressure, they were coming at me from every angle. By evening, I was exhausted. I sat in my living room, the bottle of pills from Dr. Crane still sitting on the kitchen counter, and tried to think clearly. That's when Declan called. "Josephine, I've got something," he said, his voice urgent. I had a contact at a lab analyze the vitamins Martin was taking, the ones you kept from his medicine cabinet. I leaned forward. "And?" "Thallium," Declan said. "High concentrations. Crane was poisoning him slowly. The symptoms mimic a stroke, hair loss, confusion, nausea. By the time he collapsed, his system was so compromised that no one questioned it. My hands shook. They killed him. Yes. And Josephine?" Declan's voice turned hard. "Don't take those pills Crane sent you. I'd bet my license they're laced with something to make you confused, forgetful. They're building a case that you're mentally unstable. And once they get legal control..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. I knew what came next. Declan called me at midnight. I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind churning through everything that had happened. So when my phone lit up the dark bedroom, I answered before the first ring finished. "I found him," Declan said without preamble. Or rather, I found all three of him. His voice had that cold, professional edge cops use when the news is very bad. I sat up, heart pounding. "What do you mean 3? Caleb Ashford isn't his real name," Declan said. "And he's done this before." Twice. I turned on the bedside lamp and reached for the notebook I'd been keeping. Dates, names, everything Declan had uncovered. My hands shook as I wrote. "I lifted prints from the wine glass he used at your house," Declan continued. "Ran them through a contact at the bureau. It took some digging, but I got a hit. Multiple hits, actually." He paused, and I heard papers rustling. Identity 1, Charles Whitman. Married to Spencer Reed, a tech consultant in Colorado, 2005 to 2008. Spencer died in a hiking accident at Rocky Mountain National Park. Fall from a cliff. The investigation was minimal, ruled accidental. Charles collected an $800,000 life insurance payout and disappeared. My stomach turned. And the second? Identity 2. Vivian Blackwood. Married to Nolan Bennett, a real estate developer in California, 2008 to 2010. Nolan died in a boating accident on Lake Tahoe. Explosion, faulty fuel line, according to the report. Vivian collected $1.5 million and vanished again. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "And then," Declan said, his voice hardening, "he became Caleb. He showed up in Portland in 2014. Spent 6 months researching your family before he accidentally met Dennis at a charity event in 2015. "Researching us?" I whispered. "I found digital footprints, Josephine. He accessed public records, your business filings, property holdings, tax information. He knew exactly how much your family was worth before he ever shook Dennis's hand." I felt sick. So, this was always the plan. He targeted us, yes. And here's the part I can't figure out. Declan paused. When did Dennis realize what he was? Is he a victim who got in too deep, or was he complicit from the start? I didn't have an answer. I didn't know my own son anymore. "There's more," Declan said. "I'm sending you a photo. Look at it." My phone buzzed. I opened the image. It was a photograph from a charity gala. Dennis in a tuxedo, Caleb in a tailored suit, both smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Portland Children's Hospital Fundraiser, March 2015. Their first meeting." "Look at the background," Declan said. I zoomed in. Behind Dennis and Caleb, partially obscured by other guests, stood a woman in a dark dress, Eleanor Sutherland. She was watching them. "She was there," I breathed. "At their first meeting." "Exactly," Declan said. "Which means this wasn't just Caleb's plan. Eleanor was involved from the beginning. She introduced him to Dennis, or orchestrated the meeting. Either way, Josephine, this goes deeper than we thought." I stared at Eleanor's face in the photograph. My old friend, the woman who had stood beside me at my wedding, who had been Dennis's godmother, she had been planning this for nearly a decade. Why? I asked, my voice cracking. Why would she do this? "I don't know yet," Declan said, "but I'm going to find out." I set the phone down, my hands trembling. Martin knew. He figured this out. "He did," Declan said quietly. "And Josephine, there's something else. I found Martin's private investigation files, buried in his computer, encrypted. He'd been digging into Caleb for months before he died. And there's a note, dated February 2024. He read it aloud, confronted C. Today about his past. He knows that I know. The blood drained from my face. February 2024. That was when Martin's symptoms started. The nausea, the hair loss, the confusion. He confronted Caleb, I whispered. And Caleb killed him. "That's my assessment," Declan said. Martin discovered the truth, and Caleb moved fast. Dr. Crane ramped up the poisoning. By April, Martin was gone. I pressed my hand over my mouth, fighting back the rage and grief threatening to choke me. My husband had been brave. So goddamn brave. He had faced down a killer to protect me, to protect our family, and it had cost him everything. Josephine, Declan's voice broke through the fog. Are you still with me? Yeah, I managed. I'm here. Good. Because we need to move carefully now. Caleb is dangerous. He's got a body count, and he's not going to stop. He's been planning this for years, and he's got Eleanor backing him. That means money, resources, connections. What do we do? I asked. We build the case, Declan said. I'm reaching out to investigators in Colorado and California, reopening questions about Spencer Reed and Nolan Bennett. If we can prove a pattern, we can bring this to the FBI. But it's going to take time. How much time? A few weeks, maybe more. I don't have weeks, I said, my voice shaking. They're trying to get me declared incompetent. The hearing is next week. They won't win, Declan said firmly. Lillian's on it. And I'm going to testify about the forged signatures, the surveillance, all of it. We're going to stop them, Josephine, but you need to stay alive long enough for us to do it. I looked around my dark bedroom, the house I'd shared with Martin for 40 years. The place where we'd raised Dennis, where we'd been happy. Now it felt like a battlefield. I'll be careful, I said. Good. And Josephine, one more thing. What? Martin left those files for you. He wanted you to find them. He knew you'd figure it out. He trusted you to finish what she started. I closed my eyes, tears sliding down my face. I won't let him down, I whispered. I know you won't, Declan said. Get some sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. He hung up. I sat alone in the dark. Martin's words echoing in my head. Asterisk. He knows that I know. Asterisk, Caleb had killed my husband because Martin had discovered the truth, and now I knew the truth, too, which meant I was next. Saturday afternoon, I sat in Declan's office, surrounded by old photographs and stacks of bank records, piecing together the truth about the woman I'd called my best friend for 3 decades. Declan laid the timeline across his desk like a prosecutor preparing a murder case. Except the victim wasn't a body. It was my entire adult life. Start at the beginning, I said, my voice hollow. Declan slid a faded college yearbook toward me. University of Oregon, 1963 to 1965. I opened it. There they were, young, smiling, frozen in black and white, Martin and Eleanor. They looked happy, in love. They dated for 2 years, Declan said quietly. People I tracked down say Eleanor planned to propose in the summer of 1966. My chest tightened. Martin never told me. He didn't want to hurt you, Declan replied. But that same summer, he attended a friend's wedding, and that's where he met you. I remembered it clearly. The music, the laughter, the way Martin smiled when I asked him to dance, like the rest of the room had disappeared. He chose you, Declan said, and Eleanor never recovered. He slid another document across the desk. A business registration from Seattle, dated 1967. Eleanor left Oregon, built a tech and real estate empire, made millions. But Josephine, she never married, never moved on. Every man she dated resembled Martin. I felt sick. In 1994, Declan continued. Eleanor returned to Oregon. She approached you with a business partnership. You remember that? I nodded. She said she wanted to reconnect, put the past behind us. She lied, Declan said flatly. That was the beginning of the long game. He spread out financial records, each marked with dates and signatures. For 30 years, Eleanor embedded herself into every part of your life. She advised you on deals, always pushing you toward risk. She introduced you to people who owed her favors. She positioned herself as your confidant, your friend, your son's godmother. My hands shook as I scanned the documents. 2014, Declan said, tapping a page. Eleanor introduced Dr. Malcolm Crane as your family physician. Crane owed Eleanor nearly $100,000 in gambling debts. Eleanor paid them off. In return, Crane became compliant. Compliant, I repeated. 2015. Declan went on, the charity gala, where Dennis met Caleb. Eleanor orchestrated it. She brought him into your family. 2022. I whispered, reading ahead. The loan. Declan nodded. $300,000 to Dennis for a real estate investment. It failed, likely by design. Dennis couldn't repay it. Eleanor owned him after that. My son, I said, my voice breaking. She's been manipulating my son for years, Eleanor confirmed. Dennis may be a victim or a willing participant, but Eleanor has been running a 40-year operation, waiting for the moment to destroy everything you built with Martin. I pressed my hands to my face. There's more, Declan said softly. How? I asked. He pulled out a police report, a 911 call log from April 12, 2024, the day Martin died. You were at work, Declan said. Dennis called 911 at 10:47 a.m., reporting Martin had collapsed. Paramedics arrived at 10:53. He was pronounced dead at 11:32. I nodded. I remembered every second. But look here, Declan said, pointing. 10:39 a.m. 911 call placed from mobile number 503-555-0147. Caller, Eleanor Sutherland, reporting unresponsive male at 428 Hawthorne Drive. I stared at the page. Eleanor called first. 8 minutes earlier, Declan said, which means Eleanor was at your house before Dennis. Before paramedics. The room tilted. She was there, I whispered, when he died. Declan leaned forward. Josephine, I believe Eleanor administered the final dose. Then she called 911 to control the narrative, to ensure Crane was the attending physician, to make sure the death certificate read stroke. I couldn't breathe. I stood abruptly and walked to the window, staring at the gray Portland sky. Eleanor, my best friend, the woman who stood beside me at my wedding, who held my son when he was born, who sat with me in the hospital waiting room after Martin died. No, she hadn't sat with me. She'd been there before me. Memory snapped into place, the hospital corridor, her hand heavy on my shoulder. Asterisk, Josephine, Martin went peacefully. Asterisk, she'd said. Asterisk, doctor. Crane says he didn't suffer. The stroke was too severe. Asterisk. She controlled the story from the first moment. And I believed her. I turned back to Declan. She killed him. Then she comforted me at the funeral. She gave the eulogy. She talked about how much she loved our family. Declan's jaw tightened. She's a sociopath. This was never about money. You took the man she loved, so she spent 40 years dismantling your life, your business, your son, your husband, and now you. My legs gave out. I sank into the chair. What do we do? I whispered. We prove it, Declan said. Investigators are digging into the calls, Crane's finances, the paper trail. But Eleanor is patient. We must be smarter. I looked at the timeline. 40 years of manipulation. She'll come for me next, I said. Yes, Declan replied. But this time, we'll be ready. I picked up the old photograph of Martin and Eleanor. He had chosen me, and she had never forgiven him for it. Thursday morning arrived with deceptive brightness. Clear blue skies, golden autumn leaves, the kind of day that makes you believe nothing bad could possibly happen. I was wrong. I was driving to meet Lillian at her office downtown to discuss the competency hearing scheduled for next week. The route took me east along I-84 through the Columbia River Gorge, one of the most beautiful drives in Oregon, with sweeping views of the river below and cliffs rising on either side. I had the windows cracked, letting in the cool autumn air, and I was thinking about Martin's sealed will, 6 more months until it could be opened. 6 months of walking this tightrope between investigation and survival, that's when it happened. I approached a downhill curve near mile marker 47. The speed limit dropped to 55, and I pressed the brake pedal to slow down. Nothing. My heart lurched. I pressed again, harder this time. The pedal sank to the floor with no resistance, no friction, nothing. I was still accelerating. 45 miles per hour. 50. 55. The curve was coming up fast. and beyond the guardrail, the ground dropped away into a 200-foot ravine. Asterisk. No, 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 asterisk. I pumped the brakes again. Still nothing. A semi-truck appeared ahead in my lane, brake lights flashing red. I jerked the wheel, swerving into the next lane. A horn blared as I barely missed, clipping a sedan. 60 miles per hour now. The engine screaming as the downhill slope pulled me faster. The curve ahead was sharp, almost 90 degrees. If I hit it at this speed, I didn't let myself finish the thought. Options. I needed options. The emergency brake. I yanked the handle hard. The rear wheels locked, and the car shuddered violently, fishtailing across the lane. The smell of burning rubber filled the air, but I was still going too fast. The curve was right there. Guardrail, cliff, river far below, one chance. I aimed for the guardrail at an angle, praying the metal would slow me down instead of launching me over the edge. The impact was catastrophic. Metal shrieked. Glass shattered. The airbag exploded into my face, slamming my head back against the seat. The car ground along the guardrail, sparks flying, the world spinning in a chaos of sound and pain. And then, silence. I sat there, gasping, the airbag deflating in my lap. My hands were still gripping the wheel, knuckles white. I was alive. Slowly, I turned my head. The guardrail was crumpled, bent inward from the impact. Beyond it, the cliff dropped away into nothing. I was 20 feet from the edge. 20 feet! My hands started shaking, then my arms, then my whole body. I fumbled for my seatbelt, unclipped it, and shoved the door open. My legs barely held me as I stumbled out onto the shoulder. A highway patrol car pulled up within minutes, lights flashing. The officer, Anderson according to his name tag, climbed out and jogged over. "Ma'am, are you injured?" I don't think so," I managed. "My brakes failed," I said, my voice shaking. I couldn't stop. Officer Anderson walked to the front of my car, inspecting the damage. "Old car, old brakes. Happens sometimes, especially on a downhill grade." "No," I said, louder than I intended. "It wasn't like that. It just stopped working, completely." Anderson gave me the look cops give people in shock. "We'll have the vehicle towed and inspected, but honestly, ma'am, it looks like equipment failure. You're lucky you didn't go over." "Lucky?" I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and called Declan. "Josephine, what's wrong?" "My brakes failed," I said, "on the gorge." "Declan, where are you?" "Mile marker 47, eastbound. I'm on my way. Don't let them tow the car until I get there." He hung up. Officer Anderson was filling out an incident report when Declan's truck pulled up 20 minutes later. Declan climbed out, his expression grim. "Mr. Foster," Anderson said, "friend of hers. Former Portland PD," Declan said, flashing his old badge. "Mind if I take a look at the vehicle?" Anderson shrugged. "Be my guest." Declan crouched beside my car and peered underneath. I watched his face darken. He stood and gestured for me to come closer. Then he pointed. "See this?" he said quietly, indicating a brake line. "That's been cut. Partially severed, so it would hold until you hit the brakes hard, then it would rupture completely." My stomach dropped. "Cut? Professionally," Declan said. "This wasn't an accident, Josephine. Someone tried to kill you." Officer Anderson walked over. "What are you two looking at?" Declan straightened. "Officer, this brake line was tampered with. This is an attempted homicide." Anderson's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. He crouched down, examined the line, and swore under his breath. "I'll call it in," he said. "We'll need the vehicle impounded as evidence." While Anderson radioed for a detective, I stood on the shoulder of the highway, watching semis roar past, the wind from their passage buffeting me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened the text message. Asterisk. "Accidents happen to careless old women. Stop digging." Asterisk. My blood turned to ice. I showed Declan. His jaw tightened. "They're escalating," he said. "Financial manipulation didn't work. Legal pressure didn't work. So now they're trying to kill you outright. What do I do? I whispered. You don't go anywhere alone, Declan said, and we move faster. I'm calling the FBI. This just became a federal case. By the time the tow truck arrived and took my mangled car away, it was past noon. Declan drove me home in silence, both of us processing what had just happened. When we pulled into my driveway, he put the truck in park and turned to me. Josephine, you can't stay here alone anymore. They know where you live. They've been inside your house. They tampered with your car while it was parked in your garage. I know, I said quietly. I'm staying with you tonight, Declan said. And we're getting you out of here tomorrow. Safe house, somewhere they can't find you. I wanted to argue, to say I could handle this myself, but I was exhausted and terrified. Okay, I whispered. Declan nodded. Good. Now, let's get inside. And Josephine? I looked at him. We're going to catch them. All of them. I promise you that. I believed him. But as I walked into my house, the house I'd shared with Martin for 40 years, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. 1 week after someone tried to kill me on the highway, my son invited me to dinner. I knew I shouldn't go, but I went anyway. Dennis called on Tuesday, his voice thick with what sounded like regret. Mom, I know things have been tense. Can we talk? Just dinner at our place Thursday night, please? Lillian told me not to go. Declan told me it was a trap. But part of me, the part that remembered teaching Dennis to ride a bike, the part that had held him when he was born, still wanted to believe my son wasn't trying to kill me. Okay, I said. Thursday? Declan insisted I wear a wire, a tiny recording device taped to my chest, hidden under my blouse. If they say anything incriminating, he said, we'll have it on tape. Thursday, 7 p.m. I pulled up to Dennis and Caleb's apartment building, a sleek, modern high-rise downtown, all glass and steel, nothing like the warm, cluttered home Martin and I had raised him in. Dennis met me at the door with a hug that felt too tight, too rehearsed. Mom, thanks for coming. Caleb appeared behind him, smiling. Josephine, we're so glad you're here. Something was wrong. The air felt too still. The living room was immaculate. White furniture, abstract art, not a single photograph. No trace of the family Dennis had come from. Caleb poured wine. I took the glass but barely sipped. They didn't seem to notice. We wanted to talk, Dennis said, settling onto the couch. About everything that's happened. The misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? I repeated, keeping my voice neutral. The bank thing, Dennis continued. Mom, I swear I thought you'd authorize that transfer. I was trying to help. By moving $50,000 to an offshore account? Dennis's smile faltered. It was an investment opportunity. I wanted to include you, without asking me first. Caleb cut in smoothly. Josephine, we know you've been under a lot of stress since Martin passed. Grief can make things confusing. We just want to help. There it was again, the gaslighting, making me question my own reality. I forced a smile. I appreciate the concern. Dinner's ready, Caleb announced, standing. I made your favorite. Well, Martin's favorite. My stomach turned. Coq au vin. The dish Martin used to make on special occasions. The irony wasn't lost on me. We sat at the dining table, too formal, too staged. Caleb served the plates himself, his hands graceful and deliberate. I watched him closely. Did he add something? A sprinkle of powder? A few drops from a vial? I couldn't tell. Eat, Mom, Dennis urged. Caleb worked all day on this. I took a small bite. It tasted fine, rich, savory. Nothing obviously wrong, but I didn't trust it. I pushed the food around my plate, taking tiny portions, chewing slowly. When they weren't looking, I slipped a piece of chicken into my napkin. Not hungry? Caleb asked, his eyes sharp. Doctor told me to eat light, I said. Stomach hasn't been the same since the accident. That must have been terrifying, he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Brake failure, so random. I met his eyes. Yes. Random. Dennis steered the conversation back to safer territory. Weather, holidays, neutral topics. But every few minutes, he'd circle back. Mom, You really should meet with Conrad Mercer. He's the best estate lawyer in Portland. He could help you avoid complications." "I have a lawyer," I said. "Lillian Prescott." Caleb's smile was razor sharp. "She's competent. But Conrad has connections, resources." "I'm sure he does," I said. By 9:30, I'd had enough. I stood, thanked them for dinner, and made my excuses. Dennis walked me to the door. "Think about what we said, Mom. We're family. We're on your side." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I drove home, I felt a strange sense of victory. I'd made it through. I'd recorded the conversation. I'd avoided eating most of the food. I'd won. At 11:45 p.m., I woke up in agony. The pain started in my stomach, sharp, burning, twisting. I stumbled out of bed, barely making it to the bathroom before I vomited violently. My vision blurred. The room spun. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, but my hands wouldn't cooperate. My fingers felt numb, useless. I collapsed onto the tile floor, gasping. "Declan!" I tried to shout, but it came out as a whisper. Footsteps pounded down the hall. The bathroom door flew open. "Josephine!" Declan dropped to his knees beside me. "Jesus, hang on." He pulled out his phone, dialed 911, and scooped me up like I weighed nothing. The drive to the hospital was a blur of streetlights and pain. Providence Portland Medical Center. Emergency room. The fluorescent lights were too bright. Voices swirled around me. Nurses, doctors, someone asking questions I couldn't answer. A woman in scrubs leaned over me. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm Dr. Helena Cross. Can you hear me?" I nodded weakly. "We're running a blood panel. Just hold on." Time fractured. Minutes felt like hours. Dr. Cross came back, her face grim. "Mrs. Ashford, there's thallium in your system. Someone poisoned you." I laughed. A bitter, broken sound, and immediately regretted it as my stomach clenched. "Same thing," I rasped. "That killed my husband." Dr. Cross's expression hardened. "We're calling the police. This is a criminal matter." 2 detectives showed up at 3 a.m. They took my statement, then left to interview Dennis and Caleb. Declan stayed with me, his face tight with fury. "They got you. Even with all our precautions, they got you." "Not enough to kill me," I said weakly. "Not yet," Declan said. "But Josephine, they're not going to stop." An hour later, the detectives returned. "We questioned your son and son-in-law," one of them said. "They're claiming you must have eaten something earlier in the day. They said the meal was fine. They ate the same food." "They're lying," I said. "We searched their apartment. No thallium, no poison, no evidence." "Of course not," I said bitterly. "They're professionals." The detective hesitated. "Mrs. Ashford, without physical evidence, we can't make an arrest. It's your word against theirs." Before I could respond, Conrad Mercer arrived, slick, composed, carrying a briefcase like a weapon. "Detectives," he said smoothly, "my clients are devastated by this unfortunate food poisoning incident. They're cooperating fully, but I trust you're not accusing them of anything without evidence." The detectives exchanged glances. No charges at this time. Mercer nodded. "Good. If there's nothing else, my clients would like to go home. This has been very traumatic for them." And just like that, it was over. No arrests, no consequences. I lay in the hospital bed, an IV in my arm, pumping fluids and chelating agents to flush the poison from my system. Declan sat beside me, silent and furious. "They tried to finish what they started with Martin," I whispered. "I know," Declan said. "And they're going to try again. But Josephine, next time they're going to have to go through me first." I closed my eyes, exhausted and defeated. They'd poisoned me in my own son's home, and there was nothing I could do about it. 2 weeks later, I stood in a county courthouse, facing the surreal reality that my own son was trying to have me declared legally incompetent. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined from movies. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of old paper and desperation. Dennis sat at the petitioner's table with Conrad Mercer. He wouldn't look at me. Lillian sat beside me, her notebook filled with notes, ready for battle. Judge Dorothy Lang presided, a stern woman in her late 60s, silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, eyes that missed nothing. "We're here," she said, "to determine whether Josephine Ashford possesses the mental capacity to manage her own affairs. Mr. Mercer, you may begin." Conrad Mercer stood, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, Josephine Ashford exhibits clear signs of cognitive decline, rendering her vulnerable and incapable of managing her substantial assets. We have evidence of confusion, memory loss, and poor judgment." He clicked a remote. A video appeared on the screen. It was me, stumbling through my kitchen, knocking over a glass, looking disoriented. I didn't remember that. But then I realized it must have been weeks ago when I was still taking Dr. Crane's vitamins, before I knew they were poisoning me. "As you can see," Mercer said, "Mrs. Ashford displays significant impairment." Next, he called Dr. Malcolm Crane to the stand. I watched the man who had murdered my husband swear to tell the truth. "Dr. Crane," Mercer said, "you've been Mrs. Ashford's physician for how long?" "Approximately 10 years, Crane said smoothly. "And in your professional opinion, does Mrs. Ashford suffer from cognitive decline?" "Yes. She exhibits symptoms consistent with early-stage dementia, memory loss, disorientation, confusion. I've documented these symptoms over the past 18 months. It was a masterful performance. Calm, authoritative, completely false." Mercer introduced financial records next, the $50,000 transfer, framed as evidence of my poor judgment. Then, he called Dennis to the stand. I watched my son walk to the witness box, place his hand on the Bible, and swear to tell the truth. "Mr. Ashford," Mercer said gently, "can you describe your mother's behavior over the past year?" Dennis swallowed. "She's been different since Dad died. She forgets conversations. She seems paranoid, accusing people of things that don't make sense. I'm worried about her." My heart broke as I listened to him lie under oath. Was this manipulation, or had Dennis convinced himself it was true? Lillian stood for cross-examination, her voice sharp. "Mr. Ashford, isn't it true that you owe your mother's company approximately $2 million? Dennis flinched. That's a business matter." "A business matter?" Lillian repeated. $2 million. "And if your mother were declared incompetent and you were appointed her guardian, you'd have control over that debt, correct?" "Objection," Mercer said. "Goes to motive, Your Honor," Lillian said coolly. Judge Lang nodded. "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Ashford." Dennis hesitated. "Yes, but that's not what this is about, isn't it?" Lillian said. She let the question hang in the air, then sat down. Judge Lang called a recess to review the evidence in chambers. I sat in the hallway with Lillian, my hands shaking. "They're going to win," I whispered. "No," Lillian said firmly. "They're not." When court resumed, Lillian stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence in rebuttal." She introduced an independent psychiatric evaluation arranged by Dr. Helena Cross, the ER physician who had treated me after the poisoning. "This evaluation," Lillian said, "was conducted by Dr. Samuel Rhodes, a neuropsychologist with no prior relationship to either party. His conclusion: Josephine Ashford is cognitively intact, no signs of dementia, no impairment." She handed copies to the judge and to Mercer. Next, she presented forensic evidence of the forged signature on the bank transfer documents. "This signature," she said, "was analyzed by a certified handwriting expert. It's a forgery. Mrs. Ashford did not authorize that transfer. Someone stole $50,000 from her and then used it as evidence of incompetence." Mercer shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Lillian said, "I'd like to introduce medical records showing that Mrs. Ashford has no history of cognitive decline. In fact, Dr. Crane's own notes from 2 years ago describe Mrs. Ashford as sharp and mentally acute. It's only in the past year, after Dr. Crane began prescribing certain medications, that these so-called symptoms appeared." Judge Lang leaned forward. "Are you suggesting Dr. Crane's treatment caused the symptoms?" "I'm suggesting," Lillian said carefully, that something caused them. And it wasn't dementia. She paused, then played her final card. Your Honor, I'd like to play a recording. It was made by Martin Ashford, Josephine's late husband, 2 days before he died. The courtroom went silent. Lillian pressed play on a small device. Martin's voice filled the room, weak but clear. Asterisk. If Josephine is ever declared incompetent after I'm gone, know that it's a lie. My wife is the sharpest woman I've ever known. And if someone is trying to control her legally, look to our son and his husband. Asterisk. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. Dennis went pale. Mercer's jaw tightened. Judge Lang sat back in her chair, her expression unreadable. Anything else, Miss Prescott? She asked. No, Your Honor. The evidence speaks for itself. Judge Lang nodded. I'll issue my ruling now. She looked at Dennis, then at me. The petition is denied, Mrs. Josephine Ashford is clearly of sound mind and fully capable of managing her own affairs. Furthermore, she turned to Dennis. I am ordering an investigation into potential elder abuse and financial exploitation. This court does not take lightly attempts to strip competent individuals of their rights through fraudulent means. Dennis's face went white. Conrad Mercer stood abruptly. Your Honor, my client acted in good faith. Your client, Judge Lang said coldly, lied under oath. And you, Mr. Mercer, brought a case with falsified evidence. I suggest you both consult with counsel. This hearing is adjourned. She banged the gavel. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Lillian squeezed my hand. You won, Josephine. We won, I corrected. But as we walked toward the parking lot, I saw her. Eleanor Sutherland, leaning against her car, watching. She wasn't angry. She was smiling. As I passed, she pushed off the car and walked toward me. Josephine, she said. That was impressive. Truly. Martin trained you well. I stopped, my fists clenched. We need to talk, Eleanor said. Privately. Declan stepped between us. She's not going anywhere with you. Eleanor raised her hands. I'm not here to threaten anyone. I'm here to make a deal. I don't make deals with killers, I said. Eleanor's smile widened. Not even if it saves your life? Eleanor suggested we meet at Waterfront Park, the same place where our friendship had supposedly begun 30 years ago. I agreed, but I didn't go alone. Declan would watch from a distance, camera in hand, recording everything. The autumn afternoon was cold. The Willamette River churned beside us, dark and swift. Eleanor sat on our usual bench, the one where we discussed business deals, celebrated successes, and mourned Martin's passing. Except none of it had been real. I sat down beside her, keeping a careful distance. Josephine, Eleanor said, smiling. You did well in court today. Lillian Prescott is a formidable attorney. I didn't bother with pretense. I know, Eleanor. I know everything. Her smile didn't waver. Everything? That sounds ambitious. What exactly do you think you know? I met her eyes. You and Martin. The breakup. 40 years of resentment. Dr. Crane, Caleb, the loan to Dennis. You orchestrated all of it. Eleanor leaned back, almost relaxed. Martin and I were supposed to spend our lives together. He was brilliant, handsome, perfect, and he chose you. A medical supply saleswoman. Her voice was calm, but beneath it was pure venom. I built an empire in Seattle, she continued. Made millions. But every success felt hollow because he wasn't there. So I came back, befriended you, waited. Waited for what? I asked. For the right moment, Eleanor said simply. Patience, Josephine, that's something you never understood. You rushed into everything. Your marriage, your business, your life. But I played the long game. My hands clenched into fists. Did you kill him? Eleanor tilted her head, considering the question. Martin made his choice 40 years ago. We all have to live with the consequences. Some consequences just take longer to arrive. It wasn't a confession, not technically, but it was enough. You introduced Dr. Crane to our family, I said, my voice shaking. You loaned Dennis money so you could control him. You brought Caleb into our lives. You've been planning this for decades. Planning? Eleanor said, is such a crude word. I prefer cultivating. I cultivated opportunities. I cultivated relationships. I cultivated leverage. She turned to face me fully. Do you know what it's like, Josephine, to watch the man you love build a life with someone else? To see him happy with a woman who didn't deserve him? To attend his son's birthday parties and pretend to be a friend when all you want is to burn it all down? So you did? I said. Eventually, Eleanor agreed, but not out of anger, out of fairness. Martin chose you, so I made sure you'd lose everything he gave you. Your son, your company, your peace of mind, and eventually, your life. The casual way she said it made my blood run cold. You won't get away with this, I said. Eleanor laughed, a soft, bitter sound. Josephine, I already have. You won a legal battle today. Congratulations. But legal battles are stressful, not good for the heart. A woman your age should be careful. It was a threat, thinly veiled, but unmistakable. What do you want? I asked. I want you to understand, Eleanor said. I want you to know that every moment of suffering you've experienced, every doubt, every betrayal, every sleepless night was by design. I want you to carry that knowledge with you to the grave. She stood, brushing invisible dust from her coat. You should reconcile with Dennis. Settle things before something unfortunate happens. After all, accidents are so common at your age. I stood too, my legs shaking with rage. You're insane. No, Eleanor said calmly. I'm patient. There's a difference. She turned to leave, then paused. Josephine, one more thing. I waited. Martin called your name at the end. Even as he was dying, even knowing what I'd done, he chose you. Do you know how that felt? To be there in that moment and hear him say your name? My breath caught. You were there. You gave him the final dose. Eleanor's smile was cold. He should have chosen me 40 years ago. He should have chosen me. And because he didn't, I made sure you'd lose everything he loved. Your son, your company, your life. That's fair, don't you think? She was admitting it. All of it. But there were no witnesses. No recording device on my body. Declan had the camera, but he was 50 meters away. It was just Eleanor's word against mine. Enjoy your victory today, Josephine, Eleanor said. But victories are fleeting. Consequences are forever. She walked away, hands in her pockets, unhurried. I stood by the river, shaking with fury and grief. My phone buzzed. A text from Declan. Asterisk. Got it all on video. But Josephine, I found something else. Eleanor's been moving large sums offshore. And I found encrypted messages. I think she's hired someone. We need to get you somewhere safe. Tonight, asterisk, Declan, insisted on staying at my house that night. I didn't argue. At 2 a.m, I understood why. The sound woke me, or rather, the near absence of sound. A soft click from downstairs. I lay frozen in bed, listening. Another sound. Careful footsteps on the hardwood floor. Someone was inside my house. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached slowly for my phone on the nightstand, keeping my breathing steady. Declan had installed a security system after the break incident. Why hadn't the alarm gone off? Then I heard Declan's voice, sharp and commanding. Stop right there. Police. Hands where I can see them. A scuffle erupted downstairs. Furniture scraping, a grunt of pain. The heavy thud of bodies hitting the floor. I grabbed the baseball bat from my closet. Martin had always insisted I keep something for self-defense and crept to the bedroom door. My hand shook as I eased it open. Voices below. Declan, calm but firm. Don't move. I said, don't move. I descended the stairs, bat raised, and found Declan kneeling on a man's back, pinning him face down on my living room floor. The intruder was in his early 30s, athletic build, dressed head to toe in black. Professional, he'd been. Josephine, Declan said without looking up. Call 911. Don't touch anything. I dialed with trembling fingers, my eyes locked on the intruder. On the coffee table beside them, a set of lockpicks, a suppressed handgun, and a small syringe. 911. What's your emergency? There's an intruder in my home, I said, my voice shaking. He's been subdued. We need police at 428 Hawthorne Drive. Officers are on the way. Are you injured? No, but he has a weapon. Within 5 minutes, sirens wailed outside. Portland PD flooded my house. 3 patrol officers, followed shortly by 2 detectives. Declan identified himself, flashing his old badge. Former Portland PD. I was staying with Mrs. Ashford for her protection. This man broke in through the back door. I apprehended him before he reached the bedroom. The lead detective, a woman in her 40s named Reyes, examined the items on the table. Lockpicks, suppressed firearm, and this. She picked up the syringe with gloved hands. We'll need to test this. One of the officers cuffed the intruder, Travis Sullivan according to his ID, and read him his rights. Sullivan said nothing. His face was blank, professional. He'd done this before. Detective Reyes called for an evidence tech, who ran a preliminary field test on the syringe's contents. Potassium chloride, the tech said grimly. High concentration. Reyes looked at me. Mrs. Ashford, do you know what this is? I shook my head. It's a chemical that stops the heart, she said. In a dose this large, it would cause cardiac arrest within minutes. And unless someone was specifically looking for it during an autopsy, it would look like a natural heart attack. My legs went weak. I sank onto the couch. They were going to make it look like I died in my sleep. He's not talking, one of the officers reported. Lawyered up immediately. Check his phone, Declan said. Reyes nodded. The tech unlocked Sullivan's phone, a burner, but not wiped. Encrypted messaging app, cryptocurrency payments, and messages. The most recent one, sent 12 hours ago. Asterisk, make it look natural. Best a heart attack. Double payment, if completed, before Thanksgiving. Asterisk Reyes read it aloud, then looked at me. Mrs. Ashford, do you have any idea who sent this? Yes, I said quietly. Eleanor Sutherland. Can you prove it? Not yet, Declan said. But we will. Reyes made a call. This just became federal. We've got a murder for hire crossing state lines, dark web facilitation, and possible connection to a prior homicide. She hung up and turned to me. The FBI is on the way. Agent Harper Sinclair arrived at 4 a.m. She was sharp-eyed, mid-40s, with the kind of presence that commanded a room without effort. She reviewed the evidence, questioned Sullivan, who refused to speak, and then sat down across from me at my kitchen table. Mrs. Ashford, she said, I'm Special Agent Harper Sinclair, FBI. As of now, this is a federal investigation murder for hire, conspiracy, and potentially connected to your husband's death. You're under our protection. I nodded, too exhausted to speak. I've been briefed by Detective Reyes and Mr. Foster, Sinclair continued. I understand you have evidence linking Eleanor Sutherland to this conspiracy. I'll need to see everything you have, recordings, financial records, witness statements. We have it all, Declan said. Sinclair's gaze shifted to me. The message on Sullivan's phone mentioned a deadline, before Thanksgiving. That's 3 weeks from now. Do you know why that date is significant? I stared at her, my mind racing. Thanksgiving? Why would Eleanor want me dead before Thanksgiving? I don't know, I said slowly. I don't understand. And then it hit me. Martin's sealed will. The one Lillian had mentioned. The one that couldn't be opened until 1 year after Martin's death. April 2025. But Thanksgiving was in late November, 3 weeks away. What happens at Thanksgiving? Sinclair asked, watching me closely. I don't know, I admitted. But Martin left a sealed will. It can't be opened until April, 6 months from now. Sinclair exchanged a glance with Declan. Is there anything else tied to that date? A family gathering? A business meeting? I thought hard. Dennis and Caleb always hosted Thanksgiving. They invited me every year, even after Martin died. And this year? Sinclair asked. They invited me 2 weeks ago, I said. Before the competency hearing. Sinclair leaned forward. Mrs. Ashford. I think they're planning something for Thanksgiving. If Sullivan failed tonight, they'll try again. And whatever they're planning, it's tied to that dinner. My blood ran cold. A trap. Thanksgiving dinner with my son and son-in-law. One last chance to finish what they'd started. "What do we do?" I asked. Sinclair's expression was grim. "We set a trap of our own. The FBI moved me to a safe house, an unremarkable apartment in Beaverton. For 2 weeks, I lived in limbo while Agent Sinclair built her case. The safe house was comfortable but sterile, beige walls, generic furniture, the kind of place designed to be forgotten. I met with Agent Sinclair daily, answering questions, reviewing evidence, watching my life become an FBI case file. It was exhausting and necessary. Sinclair's team worked fast. Within 3 days, they had a forensic audit of Dennis's finances. The results were damning. Dennis had embezzled $2, $1 million over 3 years from the family company. Small transfers at first, then larger ones, as he grew bolder. The money moved through offshore accounts, then vanished. Some of it went to repay Eleanor's loan, some went to Caleb. The rest was untraceable. "Your son," Sinclair said, sliding the report across the table, "has been stealing from you since 2021. Right around the time Caleb entered his life." I stared at the numbers, my hands shaking. "He's been planning this for years, or being manipulated for years," Sinclair said. "We're still trying to determine which." 5 days in, the FBI obtained a court order to exhume Martin's body. I signed the papers with trembling hands, hating every second of it. Dr. Helena Cross, the ER physician who had saved my life after the poisoning, conducted the new autopsy. The results came back a week later. Thallium in the bone marrow, in hair samples preserved from the original autopsy. Martin had been poisoned over a period of 3 to 6 months. The official cause of death was changed from stroke to homicide by poisoning. Sinclair showed me the report in the safe house. "Your husband was murdered, Mrs. Ashford. We can prove it now." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. Martin, my handsome, brilliant Martin, he had known. He had tried to warn me, and they had killed him for it. The FBI reopened the cases of Caleb's previous husbands. Spencer Reed, 2008. Hiking accident in Rocky Mountain National Park. New evidence. Reed's climbing harness showed signs of deliberate wear, frayed in a way consistent with sabotage, not natural degradation. Nolan Bennett, 2010. Boat explosion on Lake Tahoe. New evidence. Traces of an accelerant found in archived debris from the wreckage. The explosion wasn't an accident. Both cases were now homicide investigations. Caleb was a serial killer. 10 days in, the FBI brought in Dr. Malcolm Crane and Conrad Mercer for questioning separately, in interrogation rooms designed to break people. Crane lawyered up within 10 minutes, refused to answer a single question. Mercer lasted 5 minutes before invoking his right to counsel. Neither of them talked. "They're scared," Sinclair said. "But they're more scared of Eleanor than they are of us. At least for now." The breakthrough came on day 12. Sinclair's Financial Crimes Unit traced the cryptocurrency payments from Travis Sullivan backward through a labyrinth of shell companies. The trail led to a company registered in Delaware, which was owned by a subsidiary in the Caymans, which was owned by another subsidiary in Singapore. And at the end of the chain, a holding company tied to Eleanor Sutherland's business empire. But it was insulated, layered, designed for plausible deniability. "She's smart," Sinclair said, spreading the financial documents across the table. "Every transaction has a buffer. Every company has a legitimate front. If we arrested her now, her lawyers would tear us apart in court." "So what do we do?" I asked. "We get her to confess," Sinclair said. "Or we get one of her accomplices to flip." On day 14, Agent Sinclair sat across from me in the safe house and laid out the brutal truth. "Mrs. Ashford, we have enough evidence to arrest Dennis for embezzlement. We can charge Caleb with 3 counts of murder across 3 states. We can charge Dr. Crane and Conrad Mercer as accessories to murder and conspiracy." She paused. "But Eleanor Sutherland, every connection runs through intermediaries. She's protected, unless we get direct evidence, a confession, testimony from one of the others she walks." I felt rage boiling up inside me. "So, The woman who orchestrated my husband's murder just gets away with it? Not necessarily, Sinclair said, leaning forward. We have one shot Thanksgiving dinner at your house. I stared at her. We wire your entire home, she continued. You invite all of them, Dennis, Caleb, Dr. Crane, Mercer, and Eleanor. You sit down at that table and you make them talk. You get them to admit what they did on tape. Admissible in court. I couldn't find the words. That's insane. It's risky, Sinclair agreed. But it's our only option. Travis Sullivan won't talk. Crane and Mercer won't talk. Eleanor's too insulated to touch. But if you can get them together, in one room, with their guard down, people slip. They brag. They argue. They make mistakes. And if they don't, I asked, if they just sit there and eat turkey and pretend everything's fine, then you push, Sinclair said. You confront them, you call them out. You make it impossible for them to stay silent. I laughed bitterly. You're asking me to sit across from my son, from the people who murdered my husband, and trick them into confessing? Yes, Sinclair said simply. That's exactly what I'm asking. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. What if they try to kill me? I asked quietly. We'll have agents in place, Sinclair said. Declan will be there. The house will be under surveillance. The second things go south, we move in. The second things go south, I repeated. After they've already tried. Sinclair's expression softened. Mrs. Ashford, Josephine, I know what I'm asking. I know it's dangerous, but it's the only way to get justice for Martin, and it's the only way to stop them from hurting anyone else. I thought about Martin, the way he'd smiled at me the day we met, the way he'd fought to protect me even as he was dying. He had been brave. Now it was my turn. Okay, I said. I'll do it. Sinclair nodded. Then let's set the trap. I spent the week preparing for what might be my last Thanksgiving. The FBI prepared for a sting operation. Both of us hoped I'd survive it. Agent Sinclair's tech team invaded my house on Tuesday morning, installing pinhole cameras in every room, microphones hidden in light fixtures, panic buttons disguised as everyday objects. I watched them turn my home into a trap, and I felt Martin's presence in every corner. The surveillance setup took 6 hours. Cameras in the living room, dining room, kitchen, hallways, even the bathroom, just in case, Sinclair said. Microphones in the chandelier above the dining table, in the smoke detectors, in the decorative vases Martin had loved. A panic button disguised as a book on the living room shelf. Another in a kitchen drawer. If anything goes wrong, Sinclair explained, you say the safe word. Martin's favorite. Say that and we breach immediately. Declan will be in a van outside with a tactical team. Response time. 30 seconds. 30 seconds felt like an eternity, but I nodded. Understood. That afternoon, I sat down and wrote the invitations by hand. Personal, the way Martin would have done it. Asterisk, Dear Dennis, I'd like to have one more family Thanksgiving. Life is short, and I don't want to waste what time we have left on anger. Please come. Bring Caleb. Love, Mom. Asterisk, I wrote similar notes to Dr. Crane, Conrad Mercer, and Eleanor. Each one carefully worded, gentle, forgiving. A perfect lie. I mailed them Wednesday morning. The responses came quickly. Dennis called that evening. Mom, are you sure about this? His voice was wary, suspicious. I'm sure, I said. I've been thinking a lot about family, about what's important. I don't want us to be estranged, Dennis. You're my son. A long pause. Okay, we'll be there. 7, I confirmed. After he hung up, I sat in the dark, my hands shaking. My son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, and I was about to destroy him. Caleb texted, asterisk, will attend. Thank you for the invitation. Asterisk. Cold, professional, no warmth. Dr. Crane sent an email. Asterisk, Josephine. I appreciate the gesture. I'll be there. Asterisk, Conrad Mercer's assistant called. Asterisk, Mr. Mercer accepts your kind invitation and will arrive at 7 p.m. Asterisk. And then Eleanor called. Josephine, she said, her voice smooth. This is a lovely gesture. I'm touched. Of course, I'll be there. We're family, after all. There was amusement in her tone. She knew something was off, but she was too arrogant to decline. I'm glad, I said. It'll be good to have everyone together. Indeed, Eleanor said. See you Thursday. She hung up. I stared at the phone, my stomach churning. They were all coming. Agent Sinclair briefed me Wednesday afternoon in the safe house. Your goal, she said, is to keep them talking, get them arguing, make them contradict each other. If Dennis breaks, the others might follow, but save Eleanor for last. She's the smartest, the most dangerous. If you push her too early, she'll shut everything down. And if they don't talk? I asked. Then you confront them, Sinclair said. You call them out. You tell them what you know. Force their hand. What if they try to leave? We'll be watching. If anyone tries to run, we move in. I nodded, memorizing the plan. Declan and Lillian visited me Wednesday evening, emotional goodbyes disguised as social calls. Lillian hugged me at the door. Josephine, you're the bravest woman I know. Martin would be so proud of you. I hope so, I said quietly. Declan clasped my shoulder. I'll be in the van outside. Any trouble, we're coming in. You're not alone. Thank you, I said, for everything. After they left, I sat alone in Martin's office. His photograph smiled at me from the desk, taken on our 30th anniversary, his eyes bright and full of life. Tomorrow, I said to his picture, I'm going to finish what you started. I'm going to make them pay for what they did. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. The room was silent, but I felt his presence, warm, steady. He'd always been braver than me. I wrote a letter to Olivia, my granddaughter, 8 years old, innocent, asterisk. Dear Olivia, if Grandma isn't here for your next birthday, know that I loved you very much. Your father made some bad choices, but you are a good, kind child, and none of this is your fault. Be brave, be smart, and remember that love is stronger than hate. Love always, Grandma. Asterisk. I sealed the letter and left it with Lillian's contact information, just in case. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and gray. I dressed in my best suit, the navy blue one Martin had loved. He'd always said it made me look distinguished. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie. 65 years old, about to walk into a room full of people who wanted me dead, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry, and I was ready. Agent Sinclair's voice crackled through the earpiece hidden in my collar. Josephine, you're wired. Video and audio are live. Your safe word is Martin's favorite. Say that, and we breach immediately. Are you ready? I looked at Martin's photograph one last time. 40 years of love against Eleanor's 40 years of hate. Let's end this, I whispered. At 6:30 p.m., I set the table. Plates, silverware, wine glasses, the good china Martin had saved for special occasions. Everything perfect, everything in place. A trap disguised as a family dinner. At 6:50, I heard the first car pull into the driveway. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. I walked to the front door and opened it. Before Josephine confronts her enemies, I want to hear your thoughts. Comment below. Who do you think is most guilty, Dennis, Caleb, or Eleanor? Rate this video out of 10 and let me know you're still watching. Your engagement means everything and pushes me to bring you more powerful stories. Quick reminder, some elements ahead are dramatized for educational purposes. Not your style? No problem. Exit now. Ready? Let's watch the mask come off. They arrived one by one, each wearing a mask of civility over guilty consciences. By 6:30, they were all seated at my table, the Last Supper. I watched them take their places. Dennis and Caleb to my right, Eleanor to my left, Doctor. Crane and Conrad Mercer across from me. Harold and Irene Sutton, my innocent neighbors, sat at the far end of the table, a buffer of normalcy. The table looked beautiful. Martin would have been proud. Small talk over appetizers, forced, awkward, Everyone watching, everyone else. I played the gracious host. Thank you all for coming. It's been a difficult year. Dennis shifted in his seat. Mom, this means a lot. Family should stick together. I smiled. Family. Yes, that's what I want to talk about. The room went still. At 7, I stood and tapped my wine glass. The FBI was recording everything. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, I said. Some of you I've known for decades. Some of you, I thought I knew. The air changed. Everyone went quiet. I turned to Dr. Crane. Malcolm, I said, you signed my husband's death certificate. Cause of death? Stroke. But you never ordered an autopsy, Doctor. Crane set down his fork. Josephine, I don't think Thanksgiving is the time I had Martin's body exhumed, I said, cutting him off. New autopsy. He was poisoned with thallium over a period of months. I slid the autopsy report across the table. Dr. Crane went pale. I had no idea. Didn't you? I said. I pulled out my phone and played an audio file provided by the FBI. Dr. Crane's voice. Recorded months ago. Asterisk. The patient's unfortunate decline is progressing as expected. Asterisk. Eleanor's voice. Asterisk. Good. Keep me updated. Asterisk. The room froze. Dr. Crane stammered. That's taken out of context. Is it? I said. Because the FBI has 6 more recordings just like it. Harold Sutton looked horrified. Josephine? What is this? Please stay seated, Harold, I said gently. You're witnesses now. I turned to Conrad Mercer. Conrad, I said, you filed legal documents claiming I was incompetent. You forged my signature. Mercer stood abruptly. I'm leaving. This is completely inappropriate. Declan stepped out of the kitchen, blocking the doorway. Sit down, Mr. Mercer, Declan said. Dinner's not over. Mercer's face went red, but he sat. I pulled out a stack of emails, printed, highlighted. These are your exchanges with Dennis, I said. Expedite the process. Make it look natural. Would you like to explain? Mercer said nothing. His jaw was tight, calculating. I turned to Caleb. My son-in-law sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. Caleb, I said. Or should I call you Charles? Vivian? His eyes narrowed. I laid out his history like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Charles Whitman, 2008, married to Spencer Reed. He died in a hiking accident. You collected $800,000. I placed a photograph on the table. Spencer Reed's damaged climbing harness. The FBI had it re-examined. It was sabotaged. Caleb didn't flinch. Vivian Blackwood, 2010, married to Nolan Bennett. He died in a boat explosion. You collected $1.5 million. Another photograph. Debris from the boat, marked with evidence tags. Traces of an accelerant. The explosion wasn't an accident. I spread the FBI photos across the table like playing cards. Harold and Irene Sutton looked horrified. Irene started to stand. Please, I said to them. Stay. You need to hear this. Irene sank back down, her hand clutching her husband's. And now, I said, turning back to Caleb, you're here, married to my son, and 6 months after you entered our lives, my husband is dead. Caleb's expression didn't change. He was ice. You're very good at this, I said quietly. You find men with money, you marry them, you kill them, and you move on. That's an interesting story, Caleb said, his voice calm. But you can't prove I had anything to do with Martin. Can't I? I said. I placed one final document on the table, a financial record. Crane, the same account that received transfers from Dennis, and before that, from Eleanor Sutherland. Caleb stood, his chair scraping back. This is insane, he said. You invited us here to accuse us of murder based on what? Conspiracy theories and old police reports? He walked toward the door. Sit down, I said quietly. He stopped, his hand on the doorframe. We're not done, I said. Dennis, your turn. My son looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. The mask was cracking. Dennis, I said, my voice shaking, did you know when you married him? Did you know what he was? Dennis opened his mouth, closed it. His hands were trembling. Did you know he was going to kill your father? I asked. No, Dennis said, his voice breaking. I swear I didn't. But you knew about the embezzlement, I said. $2.1 million you stole from the family company to pay off Eleanor, to pay off debts, to fund… What? His lifestyle? Dennis buried his face in his hands. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, I said. Caleb's voice cut through the room, sharp and cold. This is pointless. No confession, no evidence that would hold up in court. You're a grieving old woman trying to make sense of her husband's death. He turned to leave again. Sit down, I said, louder this time. Declan moved to block him. Caleb looked at him, then at me, and slowly, deliberately, sat back down. Fine, he said. Let's play this out. What do you want, Josephine? A confession? You're not going to get one. I looked at my son, at the boy I'd raised, the man I no longer knew. Tell me the truth. Did you help him kill your father? Dennis looked at me, tears streaming down his face, and for the first time in months, I saw my son, really saw him, broken, terrified, trapped. I didn't know, he whispered. Not until it was too late. And by then, I was in too deep. Dennis couldn't meet my eyes. His hands trembled beneath the table. Beside him, Caleb leaned close and hissed, Don't say anything. But I could see it in his face. He was breaking. I kept pushing, even as it shattered my heart. I slid the stack of documents across the table. The papers rustled loudly in the suffocating silence. Every pair of eyes turned toward me. The wall clock ticked overhead, each second like a blade twisting deeper into my chest. $2,100,000, I said, my voice steady and cold. Embezzled over 3 years, hidden in offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Grand Cayman, specifically. Dennis's mouth opened. His lips trembled as if to deny it, but no sound came out. Mom, I can explain. His voice cracked. Your father discovered it, I said, cutting him off. I pulled out the photocopied journal page, Martin's elegant handwriting, painfully familiar, and placed it in front of him. I pointed to a single line, written in dark blue ink, March 2023. He wrote about it here. I read the words aloud, slowly. Dennis is stealing from his mother. I need to find proof. Dennis flinched as if struck. Sweat gathered on his forehead. Mom, Your father spent the last 6 months of his life investigating you, I continued, my voice trembling despite my effort to control it. The man who gave birth to you, raised you, loved you more than his own life. He cried every night. Dennis. Did you know that? I didn't want this, he sobbed, tears pouring down his face. I was drowning in debt. An investment went bad. I didn't know what to do. Then Eleanor said she could help, but then Caleb. Shut up, Dennis! Caleb snapped, but he couldn't stop. The words spilled out like a dam collapsing. I'm sorry, Mom. I never wanted this. They said Dad wouldn't suffer. Dr. Crane promised he'd pass peacefully. I didn't think. I never thought he'd find out. His voice broke completely. I just needed money to pay off the debts. I was weak. And then it was too late to stop. My chest felt crushed. My son, my blood. Did you know they were going to kill your father? Dennis shook his head violently, tears dropping onto his lap. Not at first. I thought it was just making him sick, to keep you distracted, to buy time. But by the time I realized, he already knew. He confronted Caleb in February. He looked at Caleb, voice shaking, and Caleb said it was too late. That if I didn't see it through, I'd go down too. The room went deathly still. Then Dennis whispered, barely audible, it was Eleanor's plan. All of it. She orchestrated everything from the beginning. I slowly turned toward the woman seated at the far end of the table. Eleanor Sutherland. The woman who had eaten at my table hundreds of times. My closest friend for 30 years. She sat perfectly still, wine glass in hand, watching with calm fascination, as if observing a performance. 30 years, Eleanor, I said, my voice ice cold. You've been playing a very long game. Eleanor set her glass down slowly. Josephine, your son is having a breakdown. This is unfortunate. Perhaps we should call lawyers and a psychiatrist before this gets worse? You were at my house when Martin died, I said, never breaking eye contact. You called 911 8 minutes before Dennis. Why were you there? The smile faded from Eleanor's face. She scanned the table. Dennis, shaking, Caleb pale, Doctor, Crane staring down, Conrad Mercer shifting in his seat. Then she looked back at me, and I saw it, the hatred she'd carried for 40 years. Eleanor stood. The mask was gone. Her voice dropped, cold and venomous. Fine, Josephine. You want the truth? I said nothing. Yes. I planned everything, she said, stepping forward, eyes fever bright. I buried Dennis in debt. I introduced Caleb, knowing exactly who he was, 2 dead husbands. I chose him for a reason. She laughed bitterly. I owned Dr. Crane with a $300,000 gambling debt, enough to ruin him, enough to ensure obedience. Her voice shook with rage. I watched Martin suffer. I counted every day he weakened, knowing he chose you over me. She leaned closer, whispering. He called your name at the end. I was there. I held his hand. And even dying, he still chose you. Her voice turned vicious. So I made sure you lost everything he loved. Your son, your company, your life. That's justice. Silence. Then, FBI. Nobody move. Doors burst open. Agents in tactical gear flooded the room. Weapons raised, orders shouted. Dr. Crane screamed. Mercer collapsed into his chair. Dennis broke down, sobbing. Caleb didn't move. Special Agent Harper Sinclair stepped forward. You are all under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, and federal crimes. Eleanor stared at me in shock. You recorded everything. I stood. Martin taught me how. Handcuffs snapped shut. As they were led away, Eleanor locked eyes with me, hatred burning until the end. When the room emptied, only silence remained. Declan entered, resting a hand on my shoulder. You did it. I picked up Martin's photo, holding it close. I promised, I whispered. Martin had fought to the end. And I finished what he started. 2 months later, I stood in the courtroom and watched justice be served. It felt nothing like victory. The sentencing hearing was swift and clinical. Judge Lang read each verdict aloud. I sat in the gallery, Lillian and Declan flanking me, listening to numbers that would never bring Martin back. Dennis Ashford, 15 years federal prison, reduced for cooperation and remorse. Caleb Ashford, life without parole, 3 counts of murder. Spencer Reed, Nolan Bennett, Martin Ashford, Dr. Malcolm Crane, 20 years. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud. Conrad Mercer, 10 years. Obstruction of justice, conspiracy. Eleanor Sutherland, life imprisonment, death penalty under consideration, mastermind, multiple counts. When the gavel fell, I felt nothing, just hollow. A week later, I visited Dennis at the county jail before his transfer. Glass partition, phone pressed to ear. My son looked smaller, somehow diminished. Mom, I don't expect forgiveness, Dennis whispered, voice breaking. I just want you to know, Dad loved you more than anything. He told me that, even at the end. He said you were the best woman he'd ever known. My throat tightened. I know, son. I know. That was all I could say. All I had left to give him. The sealed will was opened by court order in mid-January. Lillian brought me to her office. She handed me the documents with reverence. Inside, complete evidence against Eleanor. Financial crimes, communications, documents Martin had collected for 20 years. He had been building a case long before he knew he was dying. And beneath it all, a letter. Asterisk, my dearest Josephine. If you are reading this, you survived. I knew you would. You are stronger than you ever believed. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything. I tried to protect you until I had irrefutable proof. Whatever time we had left, I wanted it to be full of love, not fear. Use the time you have now to live fully. Live for both of us. I love you. Always have. Always will. Martin. Asterisk. I pressed the letter to my chest and wept. Declan put his hand on my shoulder and waited in silence. Martin had also established a fund, the Martin Ashford Foundation, for victims of domestic violence and elder abuse, seeded with $200,000 from our savings. He had planned his legacy even as he was being poisoned. I sold the company in February. 50% of the proceeds went to Martin's foundation. The rest I used to rebuild. Declan and Lillian became fixtures in my life. Sunday dinners, holidays, the family I had lost and found again. Declan introduced me to his daughter. Lillian invited me to her book club. I renovated Martin's office into a memorial library. His photos, his favorite books, a peaceful space where I could feel his presence. And I volunteered. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I worked at the foundation, helping others navigate the darkness I had survived. One evening in early March, I stood at Martin's grave, fresh flowers in hand, white lilies, his favorite. "You saved me," I said quietly. "Even after you were gone, your evidence, your preparation, your love, it was enough." The wind rustled through the trees. "I promise I'll honor the time you gave me. I'll make sure no one else suffers what we did." I knelt, placed my hand on the cold marble headstone. "Thank you, my love, for everything." A month later, I found myself at a support group session, guiding a younger widower through his grief. He was raw, broken, lost. He looked at me, eyes hollow. "How do you move forward after losing everything?" I thought of Martin, of Declan and Lillian, of my granddaughter Olivia, whom I still saw Dennis had given permission before his transfer. "You don't get over it," I said. "You move through it, and you let the people who love you carry some of the weight." He nodded, tears falling. I stayed with him until he was ready to leave. That night, I sat in Martin's library, his journal open on my lap. I read his words again, words of love, of fear, of determination. Asterisk. Josephine is the strongest woman I know. If something happens to me, she will find the truth. And she will survive. Asterisk. He had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. They say grief never ends. But I've learned something else. Neither does love. Martin's love protected me from beyond the grave, and it will guide me for whatever time I have left. This isn't just survival. This is grace. And to you, listening to this family story, remember this. God gave us wisdom to discern truth from lies and strength to face darkness when it comes. I learned that the hard way. Looking back at my own family story, I see now where I went wrong. I trusted too easily. I ignored the warning signs. I let friendship blind me to evil. Don't be like me. Don't wait until tragedy strikes to ask the hard questions. If something feels wrong in your family, investigate. If someone you love seems different, dig deeper. Don't assume the people closest to you have pure intentions. This mom's revenge story isn't really about revenge at all. It's about justice. It's about protecting the ones you love, even after they're gone. My mom's revenge wasn't driven by hatred. It was driven by love for Martin. Every mother, every wife needs to be vigilant. The moment you stop paying attention is the moment evil can slip through the door. But here's what I've learned. Mom's revenge means nothing if it leaves you empty. True victory is rebuilding. It's honoring the dead by living fully. It's turning pain into purpose. My advice: love fiercely. Protect wisely. Trust carefully. And when the worst happens, don't let it destroy who you are. If this story moved you, touched your heart, or taught you something valuable, please leave a comment below, sharing your thoughts. Have you ever faced betrayal in your own family? How did you find the strength to move forward? I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel for more powerful true stories that will challenge, inspire, and transform you. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Your time and attention mean everything. And please note, the stories that follow may contain fictionalized elements created for educational and entertainment purposes. If you prefer different content, feel free to explore other options that suit you.